Tyler James, a determined young boy from a struggling neighborhood, has always felt the weight of doubt from others, and even from himself. Life for Tyler is a constant battle of trying to help his hard-working mother while navigating a world that often underestimates him. But everything changes one fateful evening, when Tyler steps up to protect a woman in danger. An act of bravery that sets off a series of events he never expected. Offered a scholarship to a prestigious private school, Tyler enters a world far different from his own, a world of polished uniforms, high expectations, and unspoken judgments. Faced with the pressure to fit in and prove his worth both on the baseball field and in the classroom, Tyler must confront the whispers of doubt from his peers and the lingering question in his own heart. Do I really belong here? As friendships are formed, challenges are faced, and unexpected allies emerge, Tyler's journey becomes one of self-discovery and resilience. But when the stakes are highest, will Tyler have the strength to rise above the obstacles and embrace the future he's worked so hard for? The late afternoon sun hung low over the city, casting long shadows across the cracked sidewalks of Tyler James's neighborhood. The air was heavy with the mingling scents of fried food, exhaust fumes, and distant blooming jasmine vines that clung to the chain-link fences. Tyler adjusted the fraying strap of his backpack as he trudged home, his worn sneakers scuffing against the uneven pavement. His stomach rumbled faintly, but he ignored it. Dinner could wait. The streets were alive with noise. A basketball thudded rhythmically on the asphalt court nearby, while a group of boys hollered at each other over a fast-paced game. A woman called out to her children to come inside, her voice carrying over the distant wail of a police siren. Tyler kept his head down, his steps quick but steady. He had learned a long time ago not to linger too long on these streets, especially as a young black teenager. Tyler's neighborhood was far from perfect. The faded murals on brick walls spoke of past dreams, but the cracked windows and peeling paint told the truth of today. Still, he loved it in his way. This was home, a place where he knew the rhythms of life, where he could navigate the chaos with familiarity. As Tyler approached a small corner store, he noticed a young boy sitting on the curb, sniffling quietly. The boy couldn't have been more than 8, and his bike lay tipped over beside him, its chain dangling loose. Tyler hesitated for a moment. He had homework waiting at home, and he was tired from the long school day. But then, the boy's tearful eyes looked up at him, and Tyler sighed, setting his backpack down. "Hey, little man," Tyler said, crouching down to inspect the bike. "What happened?" The boy sniffed and wiped his face with his sleeve. "The chain fell off, and I can't fix it." His voice was small, trembling. Tyler nodded and got to work. His hands weren't as steady as they could have been, and the bike grease smeared onto his fingers, but he managed to guide the chain back onto the gears. After a few test spins of the pedals, the chain held. "There you go," Tyler said, standing and wiping his hands on his jeans. "Good as new." The boy grinned up at him, his tears forgotten. "Thanks, mister," he said before hopping on the bike and speeding off down the sidewalk. Tyler couldn't help but smile as he picked up his backpack. The brief interaction warmed something inside him, even as he knew it was a small thing. He continued down the block, oblivious to the sleek black sedan parked nearby. Inside, John Miller, a businessman stopping for coffee on his way home, had witnessed the scene. The next few blocks took Tyler past more familiar landmarks, a worn laundromat with its faded sign, a corner lot turned into a community garden, and the graffiti-covered basketball courts. As he neared his building, his pace quickened. The apartment complex where Tyler and his mom, Grace, lived was like many others in the area, 3 stories of tired red brick with paint peeling around the edges of the windows. The metal staircase leading to their unit creaked with every step, and the faint smell of dampness lingered in the air. It wasn't much, but Grace had worked hard to keep their place as tidy and welcoming as she could. Inside, the apartment was small but clean. The living room doubled as a dining area, and the kitchen was tucked into one corner. Tyler's room was barely big enough for his twin bed and a makeshift desk, but he appreciated the small space. It was his refuge. "Tyler, is that you?" Grace called from the kitchen, where she was stirring something on the stove. "Yeah, Mom, it's me," Tyler replied, dropping his backpack near the couch. He walked into the kitchen, where the scent of tomato sauce filled the air. Grace turned to face him, her tired eyes lighting up at the sight of her son. She was still wearing her cleaning uniform, the collar slightly askew. Despite the long hours she worked, her presence always felt like a source of calm for Tyler. "How was school?" she asked, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Tyler shrugged, grabbing a glass of water. "Same as always, just trying to keep up." Grace gave him a knowing look, but didn't press. "Dinner will be ready soon. Go wash up, and then you can tell me all about it." Tyler nodded and headed to the bathroom, splashing water on his face. As he looked in the mirror, he took a moment to study his reflection. His brown eyes, framed by lashes his mom always said were too pretty for a boy, stared back at him. He saw the lines of fatigue under his eyes, a reminder of late nights studying and early mornings. Returning to the kitchen, Tyler found Grace setting 2 plates on the small table. The meal was simple spaghetti with canned tomato sauce and a sprinkle of Parmesan, but it felt like a feast after the day he had. As they ate, Grace asked about his classes, her questions always laced with encouragement. Tyler appreciated her optimism, even though he often worried about how much pressure she put on herself to support him. He wanted to succeed, not just for himself, but for her, for all the sacrifices she made. After dinner, Tyler retreated to his room to tackle his homework. The sound of a neighbor's TV filtered through the thin walls, and a faint bass beat thumped from somewhere below. He pulled out his math textbook, flipping through the worn pages until he found the assignment. As he worked, his mind wandered to the little boy from earlier. He wondered if the boy would remember what he did, or if it would just be a passing moment in his young life. Tyler often felt invisible in the world, his kindness unnoticed or taken for granted. But that didn't stop him from trying. His mom always said that kindness was like planting seeds. You might not see them grow, but they could blossom when you least expected it. The evening passed quietly, and soon Tyler was lying in bed, staring at the faint cracks in the ceiling. His mind raced with thoughts of unfinished assignments, the basketball tryouts he wanted to join but felt too nervous about, and the nagging worry about their overdue rent. Yet, despite it all, a small flicker of hope lingered in his chest. He didn't know why, but something about today felt different, like the universe was shifting in a way he couldn't quite understand yet. As he drifted off to sleep, Tyler's dreams carried him to a field of endless possibilities, a place where kindness was rewarded, struggles were temporary, and hope was always within reach. Little did he know, the seeds of change had already been planted, waiting for the right moment to bloom. The next morning, Tyler awoke to the muffled sound of footsteps in the hallway outside their apartment. His room was dim, the early light of dawn seeping through the thin curtains. He stretched, his body aching from a restless night. Thoughts of school weighed heavily on his mind as he got ready for the day. By the time he entered the kitchen, Grace was already up, sipping coffee and flipping through a stack of mail. Her work uniform was crisp, but Tyler could see the tiredness in her eyes. "Morning, baby," she said, smiling warmly as he grabbed a piece of toast. "Morning, Mom," Tyler replied, his voice still groggy. He poured himself a glass of milk and sat down across from her. "You good on lunch money?" Grace asked, her tone casual, though he knew she worried about every penny. "Yeah, I'm fine," Tyler lied, not wanting to add to her stress. He planned to skip lunch and save the cash for something else later. Grace reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "You're going to have a good day, you hear me? Just keep doing your best." "I'll try," Tyler said, forcing a small smile. The walk to school was brisk, the air cool and damp from the early morning dew. As Tyler approached the building, his chest tightened slightly. The large brick structure loomed over him, a mix of faded pride and crumbling neglect. Inside, the familiar smell of pencil shavings and cheap cleaning supplies greeted him. The halls were alive with the buzz of students chatting, lockers slamming, and sneakers squeaking against the tiled floor. Tyler navigated the crowd with practiced ease, keeping his head down as he made his way to his first class. Math was not his favorite subject, but Mrs. Daniels, his teacher, made it bearable. She was one of the few adults in the school who seemed to genuinely care about her students. She had a calm presence and a way of making even the most daunting equations seem approachable. "Good morning, Tyler," Mrs. Daniels said as he slid into his seat. "Morning," he replied, pulling out his notebook. The lesson began, and Tyler tried to focus, but his thoughts kept drifting. He thought about the boy from yesterday, the way his smile had lit up after Tyler fixed his bike. It felt good, but it also reminded him of the times when he needed help, and no one had been there. "Tyler!" Mrs. Daniels' voice broke through his thoughts. She was standing beside his desk, her kind eyes watching him closely. "You seem a little distracted. Do you need help with the problem?" Tyler glanced at the board, realizing he had missed half the explanation. He nodded sheepishly. Mrs. Daniels crouched down beside him, explaining the problem step by step. Her patience was a relief, and by the time she walked away, Tyler felt like he might actually understand it. "Thanks," he said softly, and she gave him a small nod before moving to the next student. The rest of the day passed in a blur of lectures and hallway encounters. At lunch, Tyler found his usual spot at the edge of the cafeteria. He opened his notebook instead of a lunch bag, pretending to study while his stomach growled quietly. A group of boys at a nearby table laughed loudly, their voices carrying across the room. Tyler recognized them athletes from the basketball team. They were the kind of kids who always seemed to have everything handed to them: new shoes, easy confidence, and an entourage of friends. "Hey, nice shoes, James," one of them called out, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Tyler glanced down at his worn sneakers, the soles starting to peel at the edges. He clenched his jaw, keeping his eyes on his notebook. He had learned long ago that reacting only gave them more power. The bell rang, signaling the end of lunch, and Tyler was grateful to escape the cafeteria. The rest of the day dragged on, and by the time the final bell rang, he was exhausted. Walking home, Tyler replayed the events of the day in his mind. He thought about Mrs. Daniels' encouragement, the bullies' taunts, and the ever-present feeling of being caught between two worlds, one that demanded he rise above his circumstances and another that constantly reminded him of his limits. When he reached the apartment, Grace was not home yet. Tyler dropped his bag by the door and flopped onto the couch. He stared at the ceiling, the faint hum of the refrigerator, the only sound in the room. The door suddenly swung open, and Grace stepped in, looking more frazzled than usual. "Hey, Mom," Tyler said, sitting up. "Hey, baby," Grace replied, setting her purse on the counter. She hesitated for a moment, then walked over to him, sitting beside him on the couch. "You okay?" Tyler asked, sensing her unease. Grace smiled, but it was thin. "Yeah, just a long day. But listen, I want to tell you something." Tyler turned to face her, his curiosity piqued. "I ran into someone today. A woman named Sarah Carter," Grace said, her voice soft. "She told me what happened in the elevator yesterday." Tyler's heart sank. He had not told Grace about the incident, not wanting to worry her. "She said you stepped in to help her when no one else did," Grace continued, her eyes shining with pride. "She said you were brave, Tyler." Tyler shrugged, looking down at his hands. "I just did what I had to do. It wasn't a big deal." Grace reached out, cupping his cheek. "It was a big deal, baby. You stood up for someone when they needed it. That says everything about the kind of person you are." Before Tyler could respond, there was a knock at the door. Grace stood and opened it to reveal a well-dressed woman holding a small gift bag. "Hi, I'm Sarah Carter," the woman said, her smile warm. Grace stepped aside, motioning for Sarah to come in. Tyler felt his chest tighten as the woman entered the small living room. "Tyler," Sarah said, setting the bag on the coffee table, "I just wanted to come by and thank you again for what you did. I was terrified in that moment, and you stepped in without hesitation. It meant more to me than I can say." Tyler shifted uncomfortably, unsure how to respond. "I brought you this," Sarah continued, gesturing to the bag. "It's just a small token of my gratitude." Grace encouraged him with a nod, and Tyler hesitantly opened the bag. Inside was a handwritten note and a gift card to a local store. "I also wanted to ask you something," Sarah said, her tone more serious now. "Do you know what you want to do after school? What your plans are for the future?" Tyler blinked, surprised by the question. I want to do something, I don't know yet." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "Well, I believe in potential, Tyler, and you have it in spades. I'd like to help you figure out your next steps, if you're open to it." Tyler glanced at Grace, whose expression was a mix of amazement and hope. I don't know what to say," Tyler said, his voice quiet. "Just think about it," Sarah replied, her smile kind, "and know that you have people who see how special you are." As Sarah left, Tyler sat back on the couch, staring at the note in his hands. For the first time, he felt like maybe the world saw him differently, not as a statistic, not as just another kid from the neighborhood, but as someone with potential. The evening light softened the edges of the room as Tyler sat on the couch, staring at the note Sarah had left. Her words swirled in his mind. "You have people who see how special you are." He wasn't used to hearing things like that, especially from someone like her, well-spoken, confident, and successful. The next morning, Tyler woke up with a strange feeling, a mix of nervous energy and hope. As he got ready for school, he kept thinking about the possibility that Sarah might really want to help him. He didn't know what that help would look like, but the idea filled him with cautious optimism. By the time he reached school, the buzz of the previous day had faded into the usual routine. Tyler pushed through the crowded hallways, dodging slamming lockers and students talking loudly in clusters. In math class, Mrs. Daniels handed back graded assignments. Tyler braced himself as she approached his desk, her kind but firm expression giving nothing away. "Good work, Tyler," she said, placing the paper in front of him. A solid B stared back at him in red ink. Tyler blinked. It wasn't perfect, but it was a step forward, a small victory that lifted his spirits. "Thanks," he murmured, and Mrs. Daniels smiled, moving on to the next student. At lunch, Tyler sat alone in his usual corner of the cafeteria, flipping through his notebook. He was halfway through sketching a baseball field, a habit that helped him relax, when he noticed someone approaching. "Yo, Tyler," said Brandon, one of the boys from the basketball team. Tyler tensed, his pencil pausing mid-line. Brandon wasn't outright mean like some of the others, but he usually kept his distance. "What's up?" Tyler asked cautiously. "You play baseball, right?" Brandon asked, nodding toward the sketch. Tyler shrugged. "Yeah, a little. Why?" Brandon smirked. "Tryouts are next week. You should think about it. We need someone who can run fast." Tyler stared at him, unsure if this was a joke. "I'll think about it," he said, his tone neutral. Brandon gave a quick nod and walked off, leaving Tyler to wonder what had just happened. Later that day, Tyler stopped by the office building where his mom worked, carrying a small bag of her favorite snacks. He knew how long her shifts could be, and he liked surprising her when he had the chance. The building was sleek and modern, its glass doors reflecting the sunset as Tyler walked in. The cool blast of air conditioning greeted him, and the faint hum of conversations filled the lobby. "Here to see Grace James?" the security guard asked, recognizing Tyler. "Yes, sir," Tyler replied, nodding politely. The guard waved him through, and Tyler headed to the elevators. As he waited, he heard hurried footsteps behind him. Turning, he saw a woman in a sharp navy suit rushing toward the elevator bank. "Hold the door, please," she called out. Tyler quickly stepped inside and pressed the open button, holding it for her. She smiled as she stepped in, adjusting her bag on her shoulder. "Thank you," she said, giving him a polite nod. The doors slid shut, and the elevator began its smooth ascent. Tyler kept his eyes on the glowing numbers above, counting the floors as they passed. At the 5th floor, the doors opened again, and a man in a wrinkled shirt and tie stepped in. His expression was tense, his jaw set in a way that made Tyler uneasy. The man didn't press a button, and Tyler noticed the woman glance at him nervously before shifting slightly to the corner of the elevator. "Miss Carter," the man said, his voice sharp. Tyler's stomach dropped. Miss Carter? Could this be Sarah Carter? He glanced at the woman, his heart racing. She didn't look at him but kept her focus on the man, her grip tightening on her bag. "Listen," the man continued, his voice low but angry. "You can't just ignore my calls. I need answers." "I've already told you, Mr. Grant," Sarah said, her voice steady but strained. "This is not the place for this discussion." The tension in the small space was suffocating. Tyler felt his muscles tighten, his instincts screaming that something wasn't right. "Don't you dare dismiss me," the man snapped, stepping closer to her. "Hey," Tyler said, his voice firm despite the lump in his throat. "Back off!" The man's head snapped toward Tyler, his eyes narrowing. "Mind your business, kid," he spat. Tyler swallowed hard but didn't move. "She asked you to leave her alone. You should listen." The elevator stopped suddenly, the lights flickering. Tyler's heart pounded as the small space fell silent. The man turned back to Sarah, his voice dropping to a growl. "You think you can just get away with this?" "Hey!" Tyler shouted, stepping forward. "I said back off!" The man glared at him, his fists clenching. For a moment, Tyler thought he might swing at him, but the sound of the emergency intercom crackling to life broke the tension. "Is everything okay in there?" came the voice of the security guard. "There's a problem," Tyler said quickly, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "We need help, now." The man cursed under his breath and backed away, pressing himself against the far wall of the elevator. Tyler kept his eyes on him, his heart racing. He could feel Sarah's gaze on him, her fear and gratitude palpable. Within minutes, the elevator doors opened, and 2 security guards stepped in. They escorted the man out, his protests echoing down the hallway. Sarah let out a shaky breath, clutching her bag tightly. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling. Tyler nodded, his own hands still shaking. "Are you okay?" "I am now," she said, giving him a small but genuine smile. The guards returned and escorted Sarah and Tyler to the lobby. Sarah turned to Tyler as they reached the doors. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. "You didn't have to do that, but you did." "It was nothing," Tyler said, brushing it off. I couldn't let him talk to you like that." "It wasn't nothing," Sarah said firmly. She paused, then added, "You're Grace James's son, aren't you?" Tyler nodded, surprised. Sarah's smile softened. "Your mother speaks so highly of you. I can see why. I'll be in touch." Tyler watched as she walked out into the night, her heels clicking softly against the pavement. The ride home was quiet, but Tyler's mind raced. He couldn't shake the feeling that the events of the day were about to change his life in ways he couldn't yet imagine. The next day started like any other for Tyler. He shuffled out of bed, his muscles still tight from the tension of the previous evening. The weight of what had happened in the elevator sat with him, not heavy, but persistent, like a faint hum in the back of his mind. Grace was already up, humming softly in the kitchen as she packed her lunch for another long shift. The smell of toast and coffee filled their small apartment, familiar and comforting. Tyler slid into a chair at the table, reaching for the single slice of toast she had set aside for him. "You okay, baby?" Grace asked, glancing over her shoulder. "Yeah," Tyler replied, though his mind was elsewhere. "Something kind of happened last night, though." Grace stopped, turning to face him. Her expression shifted to concern, her hands pausing mid-motion. What happened? Tyler hesitated. He hadn't told her about the elevator incident yet. He didn't want to worry her, especially knowing how hard she worked to keep things steady for them. But keeping it to himself felt wrong, too. There was this guy, Tyler began, his voice careful. He was bothering someone in the elevator at your job, a lady named Sarah Carter. I just stepped in to help. Grace's face softened as she took a seat across from him. Sarah Carter? She repeated, recognition dawning. She's one of the executives. I clean her office sometimes. Yeah, her, Tyler said. She was pretty shaken up, but the guards took care of the guy. Grace leaned forward, her eyes filled with both pride and worry. And you? Are you okay? I'm fine, Mom. Really? Tyler assured her. It wasn't a big deal. Grace reached across the table, placing her hand over his. It was a big deal, Tyler. Standing up like that takes courage. I'm proud of you. Tyler ducked his head, her words both comforting and humbling. That afternoon, as Tyler sat on the couch flipping through his old baseball cards, there was a knock at the door. Grace answered it, and Tyler heard a warm, familiar voice that made his stomach flip. Hello, Ms. James. I hope I'm not interrupting, Sarah Carter said. Grace invited her in, and Tyler stood awkwardly as Sarah stepped into the small living room. She was dressed more casually today, in blouse and slacks, but she carried the same air of confidence Tyler had noticed before. Tyler, she said, her smile widening when she saw him. I told you I'd be in touch. He managed a small smile. I didn't expect it to be this soon. Sarah laughed lightly. I'm not much for waiting. I wanted to thank you properly. She set a small gift bag on the coffee table, but before Tyler could protest, she held up a hand. It's just a little something. Please humor me. Grace glanced at Tyler, her expression encouraging, and he hesitantly opened the bag. Inside was a handwritten card and a gift card to a local store. The note was simple but heartfelt, expressing Sarah's gratitude for his courage. Thank you, Tyler said, his voice soft. You didn't have to do this. Sarah shook her head. Actually, I did, and that's not all I wanted to talk to you about. She paused, her tone shifting to something more serious. Tyler, I see a lot of people in my line of work. Most of them are looking out for themselves. But what you did last night was different. It showed character, strength, and kindness. Those things are rare and valuable. Tyler shifted uncomfortably, unused to being praised so openly. I just did what anyone would do, he said quietly. I don't think that's true, Sarah replied, her gaze steady. And that's why I want to help you. Grace sat forward, her curiosity clear. Help him how? Sarah smiled, glancing between them. Tyler, have you thought about what you want to do after school? Where you see yourself in the future? Tyler hesitated. It was a question he had avoided answering for a long time. I mean, I want to do something, but I don't know what yet, he admitted. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. That's fair. But I'd like to offer you a chance to explore those possibilities. She reached into her bag and pulled out a sleek brochure, setting it on the table. The name Hamilton Academy was embossed in gold on the cover. It's a private school in the city, Sarah explained, known for its academics, sports programs, and connections to opportunities beyond high school. I've spoken to the administration, and they're willing to offer you a full scholarship. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Tyler stared at the brochure, his mind reeling. A scholarship? He repeated, as if saying it out loud would make it more real. Yes, Sarah said, her smile softening. Tuition, books, everything. It's a chance to focus on your education and explore your potential. Grace's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes brimming with tears. Oh my goodness, she whispered. Tyler, this is incredible. But Tyler felt frozen, the weight of the offer sinking in. I don't know, he said slowly. I'm not sure I'd fit in at a place like that." Sarah's expression didn't falter. "I understand how it might feel intimidating. But Tyler, I've seen the way you carry yourself, the kindness and strength you showed in that elevator. That's what makes you belong. Not where you come from or what you have, but who you are." Tyler glanced at Grace, whose face was a mix of pride and hope. He thought about the long nights she worked, the sacrifices she made to keep their lives steady. "You don't have to decide right now," Sarah continued. "Take some time to think about it. But I believe in you, Tyler, and I think you deserve this chance." With that, Sarah stood, shaking Grace's hand and giving Tyler a final nod. "Thank you for letting me stop by," she said warmly. "And Tyler, no matter what you decide, know that I'm rooting for you." As the door closed behind her, the apartment fell into a stunned silence. Grace turned to Tyler, her eyes still wet with emotion. "Baby," she said, her voice trembling, "this is everything we've prayed for. It's your chance to do something amazing." Tyler looked down at the brochure in his hands. The glossy pages were filled with images of sprawling green fields, polished classrooms, and students smiling in uniforms. "It's a lot, Mom," he said quietly. "I don't know if I'm ready for something like this." Grace moved to sit beside him, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. "You don't have to be ready, Tyler. You just have to try, and I'll be right here with you, every step of the way." Her words settled something in him, easing the knot of uncertainty in his chest. "Okay," he said after a long pause, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'll think about it." And as he sat there, the brochure in one hand and Grace's reassuring grip on his shoulder, Tyler felt a flicker of possibility, like the door to a new world had opened just a crack, waiting for him to step through. The days that followed Sarah Carter's visit were filled with a mix of excitement, doubt, and quiet reflection. The glossy brochure from Hamilton Academy stayed on the coffee table, its pristine edges a sharp contrast to the worn surface beneath it. Tyler found himself glancing at it often, unable to fully process the gravity of what it represented. Grace noticed. Every now and then, she would gently nudge him with words of encouragement. "Take your time, baby," she said one evening, sitting beside him on the couch. "But just remember, this isn't just about a school. It's about your future." Tyler nodded, but remained silent. He knew she was right, yet the thought of stepping into a world so different from his own terrified him. What if he didn't measure up? What if he failed? The following Saturday, Tyler found himself standing outside Hamilton Academy's tall iron gates. Sarah had arranged for him and Grace to tour the campus, offering to meet them at the entrance. The gate itself seemed intimidating, its elegant design and gold-lettered sign contrasting starkly with the chain-link fences of Tyler's neighborhood. "You okay, baby?" Grace asked, her hand lightly brushing his arm. "Yeah," Tyler replied, though his voice betrayed his nerves. As they waited, Sarah arrived in her sleek sedan, stepping out with a warm smile. "Good morning, Tyler." "Grace, I'm so glad you could make it." The three walked through the gates together, Sarah leading them along the winding stone path toward the main building. Tyler's eyes widened as he took in the campus. The sprawling lawns were immaculately trimmed, and students milled about, dressed in sharp uniforms, their laughter and conversations filling the air. It was a world he had only seen in movies or TV shows. "This is the main hall," Sarah said as they entered a grand building with high ceilings and polished wooden floors. The sunlight streamed through large windows, casting soft patterns on the walls. "Most of the classrooms are here, along with the library and science labs." Grace's eyes glistened with awe, but Tyler felt a knot tightening in his stomach. It was all so polished, so perfect. He couldn't help but wonder how he would ever fit into a place like this. Sarah must have noticed his hesitation, because she slowed her pace, walking beside him. "It can be a lot to take in at first," she said gently. but I want you to know that this school isn't about where you come from. It's about where you're going." Tyler nodded, unsure of how to respond. He appreciated her words, but couldn't shake the feeling of being out of place. As they toured the campus, they reached a highlight for Tyler, the baseball field. The sight of it stopped him in his tracks. The grass was pristine, the diamond carefully groomed, and the dugouts looked like something out of a professional stadium. "You're into baseball, right?" Sarah asked, a knowing smile on her face. "Yeah," Tyler said, his voice soft. His hands instinctively tightened into fists, imagining the feel of a bat. He could picture himself out there, running the bases, feeling the wind on his face. "This field is home to one of the best high school teams in the state," Sarah continued. "I know you'd make a great addition." Grace turned to Tyler, her face lighting up. "Baby, this is it. I can see you out there." Tyler glanced at her, then back at the field. The knot in his stomach loosened slightly. For the first time, he felt a small flicker of excitement, like maybe, just maybe, he could belong here. After the tour, Sarah guided them to an office near the main hall, where they met the admissions director, Mr. Caldwell. He was a tall man with a kind smile and a firm handshake. "Tyler, it's a pleasure to meet you," Mr. Caldwell said. "Sarah has told me about your bravery and character. I'm confident you'll be a great fit here." Tyler nodded politely, still unsure of what to say. Grace, ever the voice of reassurance, stepped in. "Thank you for giving my son this opportunity. It means the world to us." Mr. Caldwell spent the next half hour explaining the scholarship details, outlining the support services available to students, and emphasizing Hamilton's commitment to fostering a sense of community. Tyler listened carefully, his nervousness gradually giving way to cautious hope. As they left the office, Sarah turned to Tyler. "How are you feeling?" "I don't know," Tyler admitted. "It's a lot to take in." Sarah smiled. "That's completely normal. But I want you to remember something, Tyler. Every student who starts here feels nervous, unsure of themselves. What matters is that you're willing to try." Grace squeezed Tyler's shoulder as they walked back to the car. "She's right, baby. You've got this." That evening, back at home, Tyler sat at the kitchen table with Grace. The brochure lay open between them, its pages filled with photos of students smiling, classrooms bustling, and teams celebrating victories. Tyler traced his fingers along the edges, his thoughts swirling. "What do you think, Mom?" he asked quietly. Grace looked at him, her eyes filled with love and pride. "I think this is your chance, Tyler. Your chance to do something amazing." Tyler nodded, his mind still racing. "But what if I don't belong? What if I fail?" Grace reached across the table, taking his hand in hers. "You've already proven you belong, baby. What you did for that woman, the way you carry yourself every day, you've got more strength and courage than most people ever will. And if you stumble, I'll be right here to help you get back up." Tyler swallowed hard, her words settling in his chest like a steady rhythm. He thought about the baseball field, the classrooms, and the way Sarah and Mr. Caldwell had looked at him, not with pity, but with belief. Maybe they saw something in him that he hadn't yet learned to see in himself. Taking a deep breath, he nodded. "Okay," he said, his voice steady. "I'll do it." Grace's face broke into a wide smile, and she pulled him into a tight hug. "I'm so proud of you, Tyler. You're going to do great things." As Tyler sat back down, a small smile tugged at his lips. For the first time, he felt a spark of hope, not just for what could be, but for what he could become. The first day at Hamilton Academy arrived sooner than Tyler expected. He stood in front of the mirror in his room, adjusting the navy blazer of his new uniform. The crisp fabric felt foreign against his skin, and the school crest embroidered on the pocket seemed to shine like a beacon of his unease. Grace appeared in the doorway, holding her phone. "You look so handsome, baby," she said, her voice soft with emotion. She stepped closer and smoothed his collar. "I know it's a lot, but you're going to do great. Just remember, You've already earned your place there." Tyler gave her a small nod, though his stomach churned. The words of encouragement helped, but they didn't erase the nerves. This wasn't just a new school, it was a different world. The bus ride to Hamilton Academy felt surreal. As Tyler stared out the window, the city blocks gradually gave way to tree-lined streets and sprawling houses with pristine lawns. It was the kind of neighborhood he had only seen in magazines or TV shows. When the bus pulled up to the school gates, Tyler hesitated for a moment before stepping off. He adjusted his backpack and looked around. The grand campus he had toured just days ago now felt overwhelming, teeming with students in identical uniforms. Tyler forced himself to keep moving, clutching the map of the school that Sarah had given him. He glanced at the other students, their polished shoes clicking on the stone pathways, and their voices blending into a hum of confidence. It was impossible not to feel out of place. Inside the main building, Tyler navigated the wide hallways, his eyes scanning the room numbers. His first class was history, and he had just found the door when a voice stopped him. "Hey, are you new here?" Tyler turned to see a boy about his age with wavy brown hair and a curious smile. Yeah," Tyler replied, adjusting his backpack. "I thought so. I haven't seen you around before." "I'm Alex Carter," the boy said, extending a hand. It took Tyler a moment to recognize the name. "You're Sarah's son?" Alex grinned. "That's me. She mentioned you were starting today. Want me to show you around?" Relief flooded Tyler's chest. "Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks." Alex walked with him into the classroom, chatting easily about the school and pointing out details Tyler hadn't noticed before. It wasn't long before they found seats together near the middle of the room. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of introductions and lessons. Tyler did his best to focus, though the sheer size of the classes and the pace of the discussions left him feeling like he was always a step behind. By lunchtime, Tyler was exhausted. He stood at the edge of the bustling cafeteria, holding his tray of food and scanning the room. The long tables were filled with groups of students, their laughter and chatter ringing out. "Tyler," Alex's voice called out, and Tyler spotted him waving from a table near the windows. He made his way over, his chest tightening as he noticed the other students at the table. They were all laughing and talking confidently, their uniforms immaculate, their postures relaxed. "Hey everyone," Alex said as Tyler sat down. "This is Tyler. He's new." The group turned their attention to him, offering polite smiles and quick introductions. Tyler nodded in return, feeling out of place, but grateful for Alex's friendliness. As the conversation picked up again, Tyler kept mostly quiet, listening as they talked about sports, vacations, and school events he didn't recognize. "Do you play any sports?" one of the girls asked, breaking him out of his thoughts. "Baseball," Tyler said, his voice steady. "Nice," Alex said with a grin. "The team's always looking for talent. Tryouts are next week. You should come." Tyler hesitated. The idea of playing was tempting, but the thought of competing against seasoned players made him nervous. "Yeah, maybe," he said, keeping his tone non-committal. Alex clapped him on the shoulder. "You'll do great. Trust me." By the end of the day, Tyler was drained. The walk to the bus stop felt heavier than it had that morning, and he kept his head down, replaying the day in his mind. At home, Grace was waiting for him in the kitchen, her smile brightening when he walked in. "Hey, baby. How was it?" "It was okay," Tyler said, setting his bag down. He didn't want to dampen her excitement, but the truth was that he felt like a small fish in a very large pond. Grace poured him a glass of water and sat across from him. "You've got this, Tyler. It's just the first day. Give yourself time to get used to it." "I know, Mom," he said, forcing a small smile. The days that followed were a mix of highs and lows. Tyler struggled to keep up in some of his classes, where the other students seemed to have a head start on him. But in others, like history, he found himself holding his own. Alex continued to be a steady presence, introducing him to more people and helping him navigate the maze of hallways. Tyler appreciated his easygoing nature and felt himself slowly relaxing around him. The baseball field became Tyler's favorite place on campus. After school, he often wandered there, sitting in the bleachers and watching the older players practice. The sight of them running drills and swinging bats stirred something in him, a reminder of the community field back home and the friends he had left behind. One afternoon, Coach Reynolds spotted him sitting alone and approached. "You thinking about trying out?" the coach asked, his voice gruff but not unkind. Tyler hesitated. "I'm not sure if I'm good enough," he admitted. Coach Reynolds raised an eyebrow. "There's only one way to find out. I'll see you at tryouts." The words stayed with Tyler as he walked home that day. He thought about the encouragement from Alex, the hope in Grace's eyes, and the opportunities waiting just beyond his fear. That night, as he lay in bed, he stared at the ceiling, his mind buzzing with a mix of anxiety and determination. For the first time, he allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, he could find his place here. The morning of baseball tryouts arrived with an air of nervous energy. Tyler woke up earlier than usual, staring at the faded poster of his favorite player, Jackie Robinson, taped to the wall above his bed. The image of Robinson standing tall at home plate gave Tyler a flicker of courage. If someone like him could break barriers, maybe Tyler could carve his place at Hamilton Academy too. "Big day today," Grace said as Tyler sat down at the kitchen table for breakfast. She slid a plate of scrambled eggs and toast in front of him, her eyes bright with encouragement. Tyler nodded, though his stomach was too tight to eat. "Yeah, Coach Reynolds said I should come." Grace smiled, sitting across from him. "You've been playing since you could walk, baby. They'd be lucky to have you." He appreciated her words, but doubt lingered. The players he had seen during practices were skilled, confident, and seemed born for this. He couldn't help but wonder if they'd take one look at him at his old scuffed cleats and write him off before he even got a chance. When Tyler arrived at the field that afternoon, the nervousness in his chest grew heavier. A group of boys had already gathered, tossing balls back and forth, their movements fluid and practiced. Tyler set his bag down near the bleachers and laced up his cleats, trying to ignore the glances from some of the others. "Hey, James," Alex called out, jogging over. Tyler managed a small smile. "Hey!" "Relax, man," Alex said, slapping him on the back. "You've got this. Just play your game." Coach Reynolds blew his whistle, his voice booming, as he called everyone to the center of the field. "All right, listen up," the coach said, his sharp gaze moving over the group. "This isn't about where you're from or what you've done before. It's about what you show me today. Give it everything you've got." Tyler took a deep breath as the drills began. The first few were basic fielding grounders, catching pop flies and running sprints. Tyler moved with determination, his muscles loosening with each task. When it was time to hit, Tyler stepped into the batter's box, gripping the bat tightly. The pitcher stared him down, his smirk hinting at doubt. Tyler narrowed his eyes, blocking out the noise and the weight of expectations. The pitch came fast, but Tyler's swing was faster. The crack of the bat connecting with the ball sent it soaring into the outfield. A few heads turned, including Coach Reynolds's, who gave a small nod of approval. Despite his strong performance, the day wasn't without challenges. Tyler overheard snippets of conversation as the tryouts continued, comments not meant for his ears but cutting all the same. "Who's that kid?" one boy whispered to another. "Never seen him before." "He's from the scholarship program," someone muttered. "Doubt he'll make it past today." Tyler clenched his jaw, forcing himself to focus. He had heard things like this before, back in his neighborhood and at his old school. People underestimating him, assuming he didn't belong. But he wasn't about to let their words define him. By the end of tryouts, Tyler's body ached, and his shirt was soaked with sweat. Coach Reynolds gathered the group once more, his expression as unreadable as ever. "You'll find out tomorrow if you made the team," the coach said. "List will be posted outside my office." As the players dispersed, Tyler lingered near the bleachers, untying his cleats. Alex jogged over, his grin wide. "Dude, you crushed it," Alex said, sitting beside him. "That hit was a bomb." Reynolds definitely noticed. "Thanks," Tyler said, though he wasn't sure if he believed it. Alex nudged him with his shoulder. "Seriously, you're going to make the team. I can feel it." The next day, Tyler arrived at school early, his stomach churning with nerves. A small crowd had gathered near Coach Reynolds' office, students scanning the list posted on the bulletin board. Tyler hesitated, hanging back until most of the others had left. When he finally stepped forward, his eyes darted down the list of names, his heart pounding. Then he saw it. Tyler James. His breath caught, and a grin spread across his face. He had done it. "Hey, I knew it!" Alex's voice rang out as he appeared beside Tyler, clapping him on the back. "Congrats, man!" Tyler laughed, the relief washing over him like a wave. "Thanks, Alex." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of practices and classes. Being on the team was both exhilarating and exhausting. Coach Reynolds was demanding, pushing the players to their limits during drills and scrimmages. "James!" the coach barked one afternoon as Tyler sprinted across the outfield. "Stay on your toes! Anticipate the ball!" "Yes, sir!" Tyler shouted back, digging deep into his reserves of energy. The physical demands of practice were tough, but Tyler welcomed the challenge. What he hadn't anticipated were the subtle undercurrents of skepticism from some of his teammates. During water breaks, he often caught snippets of conversation, boys whispering just loud enough for him to hear. "Think he'll keep up?" "Doubt it. He's got hustle, but this isn't some street league." Tyler kept his head down, refusing to let their words shake him. Instead, he focused on proving himself with every play, every swing, every sprint. Off the field, the classroom posed its own challenges. Some of his classes felt like a constant uphill climb, the material far more advanced than what he was used to. But Tyler worked late into the nights, his desk covered in textbooks and notes, as he tried to catch up. Grace often peeked into his room, her face filled with quiet pride. "You're doing great, baby," she'd say, placing a hand on his shoulder. Her encouragement kept him going, even on the hardest days. One Friday afternoon, after a grueling practice, Tyler found himself sitting alone in the bleachers, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. His body ached, and the faint sting of the day's whispers lingered in his mind. He didn't hear Coach Reynolds approach until the man was standing beside him, arms crossed. "Good work today," the coach said, his tone gruff but sincere. "Thanks, Coach," Tyler replied, his voice quiet. Reynolds sat down, his expression softening. "I see you, James. I see the effort you're putting in, both on the field and off. That's what matters, not what anyone else says." Tyler looked at him, surprised by the rare moment of encouragement. "Thanks, Coach," he said again, this time with more conviction. The coach stood, giving him a firm nod before walking away. As Tyler watched him go, a small spark of determination lit within him. He had faced doubt and adversity before, and he knew he'd face more in the future. But with each challenge, he grew stronger, more certain of the person he was becoming. He wasn't just playing for a spot on the team. He was playing for himself, for Grace, and for the future he was beginning to believe he deserved. The following weeks at Hamilton Academy were a mix of triumphs and trials for Tyler. His days were consumed by a grueling routine of early morning classes, late-night studying, and intense baseball practices. The strain was palpable, but Tyler clung to the small victories: a perfect play during practice, a B+ on a history essay, or a smile from Grace when he told her about his progress. Still, the weight of expectations bore down on him. Balancing school and the team were harder than he had imagined. Every mistake he made, whether in class or on the field, felt magnified. One crisp afternoon, the baseball team had a scrimmage against a rival school's team. It wasn't a formal game, but Coach Reynolds treated it like one, his voice sharp as he barked orders from the dugout. Tyler was in center field, his heart pounding as he watched the opposing batter step up to the plate. The bases were loaded, and the score was tied. The crack of the bat sent the ball flying into the air, a high, arching hit that sailed toward Tyler's position. Tyler ran, his feet pounding the grass, his glove outstretched. The ball hung in the air for what felt like an eternity before descending fast. Tyler dove, stretching as far as he could. The ball smacked into his glove, but as he hit the ground, it popped loose and rolled onto the grass. The runners advanced, and the opposing team scored 3 runs. Tyler scrambled to retrieve the ball, but it was too late. "Come on, James!" someone shouted from the infield. "Get your head in the game!" Tyler's cheeks burned as he jogged back to his spot, the sting of the dropped catch sharper than the words of his teammates. After the scrimmage, Tyler lingered on the field, sitting on the bleachers as the other players packed up and left. He stared at the grass, replaying the missed catch over and over in his mind. "Rough day?" Alex's voice broke through Tyler's thoughts. Tyler glanced up to see Alex standing nearby, his baseball bag slung over one shoulder. "You could say that," Tyler muttered, looking away. Alex sat down beside him. "You're being too hard on yourself, man. It happens." "Yeah, but not to them," Tyler said, nodding toward the empty field where his more seasoned teammates had played flawlessly. "They already think I don't belong here, and today just proved them right." Alex frowned. "That's not true. You're on this team because you earned it." Tyler shook his head, frustration bubbling to the surface. "It doesn't feel like it. Every time I mess up, it's like they're just waiting for me to fail." Alex was quiet for a moment, then said, "You know, my mom told me about what you did in that elevator. She said you stood up for her without even thinking twice. That takes guts, Tyler. The kind of guts most people don't have. You belong here, and you've already proved it in ways they never could." Tyler looked at Alex, his words hitting deeper than he expected. "Come on," Alex said, standing and offering his hand. "We've got another practice tomorrow. Let's get ready to crush it." For the first time that day, Tyler smiled. He took Alex's hand and stood, the knot in his chest loosening just a little. The next day at practice, Tyler focused harder than ever. He pushed himself through every drill, ran every sprint like it was his last, and swung the bat with precision. Coach Reynolds noticed, giving him an approving nod when Tyler executed a perfect relay throw. "Good work, James," the coach said as practice ended. "Keep it up." Tyler felt a flicker of pride at the words, but he knew he still had work to do. A week later, the team had another scrimmage, this time against a stronger opponent. Tyler was determined to redeem himself. He had spent hours after practice running drills on his own, visualizing every possible play. The game was close. The score tied in the final inning. The opposing team's fastest runner was on second base, and their best hitter stepped up to the plate. Tyler stood in center field, his legs tense, his eyes sharp. The batter swung, and the ball flew high into the outfield, straight toward Tyler. This time, Tyler didn't hesitate. He ran at full speed, tracking the ball as it soared through the air. With a leap, he extended his glove, feeling the satisfying thud of the ball landing securely inside. He hit the ground but held tight to the ball, raising it triumphantly as the umpire signaled the out. The crowd erupted in cheers, and Tyler's teammates ran toward him, slapping his back and ruffling his hair. "That's what I'm talking about, James," one of them shouted. Tyler grinned, his chest swelling with pride. He had done it. After the game, Coach Reynolds pulled Tyler aside. "You've got something special, James," the coach said. "But it's not just your talent, it's your heart. Keep showing up like this, and you'll go far." "Thank you, Coach," Tyler said, his voice steady. That night, Tyler sat at the kitchen table, telling Grace about the game. Her face lit up as he described the catch, her pride evident in every word she spoke. "I told you, baby," she said, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. "You belong there." Tyler nodded, a warmth spreading through him. He thought about the journey so far, the doubts, the challenges, and the moments of triumph. For the first time, he felt not just like he was surviving at Hamilton Academy, but thriving. And that was only the beginning. The days following Tyler's game-winning catch were a whirlwind. At school, teammates who had barely spoken to him before now nodded in acknowledgement or clapped him on the back as they passed in the hallway. Even Coach Reynolds seemed to regard him differently, his gruff demeanor softening ever so slightly during practices. For the first time since arriving at Hamilton Academy, Tyler felt like he wasn't just surviving, but starting to belong. Yet, beneath the surface, a flicker of doubt lingered. Was this acceptance real, or was it tied to his performance on the field? During lunch one day, Tyler sat with Alex and a few of the other baseball players. Their conversation shifted between homework, upcoming games, and plans for the weekend. Tyler listened more than he spoke, still finding his footing in the group dynamic. "James," one of the older players, Mark, said suddenly, "you thinking about varsity next year?" Tyler blinked, caught off guard. I don't know. Maybe?" "You should," Alex chimed in, grinning. "Coach already has his eye on you. That catch last week? Legendary." The group murmured in agreement, and Tyler felt a mix of pride and unease. He wanted to believe their praise was genuine, but a small part of him still wondered if he'd ever fully shake the feeling of being an outsider. After school, Tyler stayed late to practice. The field was quiet, the sky a soft orange as the sun dipped toward the horizon. He worked through drills on his own, focusing on his throws and tracking fly balls with precision. As he ran to retrieve a ball near the fence, he heard a voice behind him. "You're putting in the work, huh?" Tyler turned to see Coach Reynolds standing near the dugout, arms crossed. "Yes, sir," Tyler said, jogging back with the ball in hand. The coach nodded, his gaze steady. "That's what it takes. Talent only gets you so far. It's the work that makes the difference." Tyler nodded, appreciating the rare moment of direct encouragement. Coach Reynolds stepped closer. "Listen, James, you've got potential not just as a player, but as a leader. Don't let anyone make you doubt that." The words struck a chord in Tyler. Coming from someone as tough as Reynolds, they carried weight. "Thank you, Coach," Tyler said, his voice firm. That evening, as Tyler walked home, his thoughts lingered on the coach's words. He felt a new sense of determination building inside him. For so long, he had focused on proving himself to others, his teammates, his classmates, even himself. But maybe it was time to stop worrying about earning their approval and start focusing on his own growth. When he got home, Grace was waiting in the kitchen, as she often was, a warm smile greeting him. "How was practice, baby?" she asked, placing a plate of food in front of him. "It was good," Tyler said, sitting down. "Coach talked to me. He thinks I can be a leader." Grace's smile widened, pride shining in her eyes. "Of course he does. I've always known you're meant for great things," Tyler chuckled, shaking his head. "You always say that, Mom." "Because it's true," Grace replied. "But it doesn't matter what I see. What do you see, Tyler? What do you believe you can do?" The question caught him off guard. He sat in silence for a moment, her words echoing in his mind. "I think," Tyler began slowly, "I think I can do more than I ever thought I could. But it's scary, stepping up, taking on more." Grace reached across the table, her hand resting over his. "The best things in life are often the scariest, baby. But you've already shown you're brave. You've got this." Tyler nodded, her encouragement settling deep in his chest. The next day at school, Tyler approached his classes with a new sense of purpose. He stayed after history to ask questions, determined to improve his next essay. He tackled his math homework with more focus, pausing to work through each problem instead of rushing. In English, Mrs. Bailey, the teacher known for her tough grading, handed back an assignment Tyler had worked especially hard on. "Nice improvement, Mr. James," she said as she handed him the paper, a small smile breaking her usually stern expression. Tyler stared at the grade an A- and felt a rush of pride. At baseball practice that afternoon, Tyler carried that confidence with him. The team was running situational drills, and Tyler found himself calling out plays to his teammates, positioning them strategically. "James, heads up!" one of the players shouted as the ball came flying toward him. Tyler caught it with ease and fired it to second base, completing a double play. The team cheered, and Tyler allowed himself a small smile. "Nice work, James," Coach Reynolds called out. By the time practice ended, Tyler felt more at home on the field than he ever had before. That evening, as Tyler walked home under the soft glow of the streetlights, he thought about how far he had come. From the boy who had doubted his place at Hamilton Academy to the player his coach trusted and his teammates respected, he was beginning to see himself in a new light. The doubts hadn't disappeared entirely, but they were quieter now, overshadowed by a growing belief in his own abilities. When Tyler reached the apartment, Grace was waiting as usual, her smile as warm and reassuring as ever. "How was practice?" she asked. "Good," Tyler said, setting his bag down. "Really good." Grace nodded, her pride evident. "That's my boy." Tyler smiled, feeling the weight of the day lift. He knew there were still challenges ahead, more games to play, more lessons to learn. But for the first time, he felt ready to face them, not just for his mom or his team, but for himself. And that made all the difference. Spring arrived at Hamilton Academy, the air warming and the fields turning a vibrant green. The baseball season was in full swing, and Tyler had settled into a steady rhythm both on the field and in the classroom. Each day was still a challenge, but he faced it with a resilience he hadn't known he possessed. One Saturday morning, Tyler and Grace sat in their modest kitchen, the light streaming through the curtains. Grace sipped her coffee, watching Tyler as he reviewed his math notes for an upcoming test. "You're really sticking with it," Grace said, her voice warm with pride. "Yeah," Tyler replied, glancing up. "I guess I figured out I'm stronger than I thought." Grace chuckled softly. "Told you so." Before Tyler could respond, there was a knock at the door. Grace rose to answer it, and Tyler heard a familiar voice. "Good morning, Miss James." Tyler turned in his seat to see Sarah Carter standing in the doorway, her ever-confident smile lighting up the room. She held a large envelope in her hand. "Sarah," Grace said, stepping aside to let her in. "Come in. It's always good to see you." Tyler stood, his heart racing slightly as Sarah entered the room. "I won't take much of your time," Sarah said, her tone bright, "but I have something important to share with you both." She handed the envelope to Tyler. He hesitated for a moment, then opened it carefully. Inside was a certificate bearing his name, Tyler James, recipient of the Hamilton Leadership Scholarship Award. "What's this?" Tyler asked, his brow furrowing. "It's recognition for students who excel beyond academics," Sarah explained. "It's for those who show leadership, determination, and the potential to make a real difference. I nominated you, and the board agreed. The award comes with additional support for college applications and a small stipend for your senior year." Grace gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "Oh my goodness, Tyler!" Tyler stared at the certificate, his emotions swirling. He had come to Hamilton Academy feeling like an outsider, unsure if he even deserved to be there. And now, he was being recognized not just for his performance, but for who he was. I don't know what to say," Tyler said, his voice quiet. Sarah placed a hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to say anything, Tyler. You've earned this, and I'm so proud of you." Grace stepped forward, pulling Tyler into a tight hug. "I knew you could do it, baby," she whispered, her voice breaking. Tyler closed his eyes, the weight of the moment settling over him like a warm blanket. At school the following week, the announcement of Tyler's award was met with applause from his classmates and teammates. Even some of the students who had once doubted him now seemed genuinely supportive. "Congrats, James," one of the older players said during practice. "You deserve it." Tyler smiled, the words carrying more meaning than they knew. As the weeks passed, Tyler found himself more confident in his place at Hamilton. He excelled on the field, helping the team secure a spot in the playoffs. In the classroom, he pushed himself harder, staying late to study and seeking help when he needed it. One day after practice, Tyler sat on the bleachers, looking out at the empty field. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the grass. Alex joined him, sitting down with a water bottle in hand. "Big playoff game next week," Alex said. "You ready?" "Yeah," Tyler replied, a small smile tugging at his lips. "I think I am." Alex nodded, then looked at Tyler with a grin. "You know, when you first showed up, I didn't think you'd stick around. But man, you proved me wrong." "Thanks, I think," Tyler said, laughing. "No, seriously," Alex continued. "You're one of the hardest working guys I know. It's inspiring." Tyler looked down at the field, the weight of Alex's words sinking in. For so long, he had worked to prove himself, not realizing how much he was changing in the process. On the day of the playoff game, the stands were packed with students, parents, and teachers. Grace sat in the front row, her eyes glued to the field as Tyler jogged out with his team. The game was intense, each inning a battle. Tyler made key plays in the outfield, diving for catches and firing throws to home plate with precision. In the bottom of the ninth, with 2 outs and the score tied, Tyler stepped up to the plate. The crowd fell silent as he adjusted his stance, gripping the bat tightly. The pitcher wound up, and the ball came hurtling toward him. Tyler swung with everything he had, the crack of the bat echoing across the field. The ball soared high and deep, clearing the fence with room to spare. The crowd erupted as Tyler rounded the bases, his teammates swarming him at home plate. Grace stood in the stands, tears streaming down her face as she clapped wildly. That night, as Tyler walked home with Grace, the stars shining brightly above them, he felt a deep sense of peace. "You were incredible out there," Grace said, her arm around his shoulders. "Thanks, Mom," Tyler replied, smiling. As they reached their apartment, Tyler paused, looking up at the building. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, the doubts, the struggles, and the people who had shown him kindness along the way. "Mom," Tyler said, his voice steady, "I think I finally believe it." "Believe what, baby?" "That I belong," Tyler said, his smile widening. "That I can do this." Grace hugged him tightly, her heart full. And as they walked inside, Tyler felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. He knew there would be more challenges ahead, but he also knew he had the strength to face them. And with each step, he was building a future he could be proud of, not just for himself, but for everyone who believed in him. This was just the beginning. Tyler stood in his graduation robe on the Hamilton Academy field, the same place where he had once doubted his abilities. The sun shone brightly as he gripped his diploma, looking out at the crowd. Grace sat in the front row, her eyes filled with tears of pride. As applause erupted around him, Tyler thought about how far he had come. From a boy unsure of his place to a young man ready to embrace the future, his journey was a testament to perseverance, kindness, and hope. Looking toward the horizon, Tyler smiled, knowing that his story was just beginning. If you enjoyed Tyler's journey and believe in the power of resilience, kindness, and hope, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. By subscribing, you'll stay connected to more inspiring stories like this one. Join us on this journey of uplifting tales that remind us all, no matter where we start, we have the power to create a brighter future. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.